Hi everyone, I'm Saran, and today I am reviewing The Four Agreements, which is the second book on my list of 17 books that I am reading, reviewing, and resourcing in this year, 2017. So The Four Agreements, I first found out about this book when my mom actually gifted me with The Fifth Agreement, which is a book that was written after this, like a sequel book. And in the book, it was talking about this Toltec wisdom that the Four Agreements held, and I started doing research on the book and found that it was like world renowned. And Don Miguel Ruiz, who is the author of it, is like a spiritualist and someone who people look up to. So I said, okay, gotta read the Four Agreements. It was another book that everyone was telling me that I should read and that a few of my mentors told me that they gained from. So I decided that I was going to jump forward and read the Four Agreements. So the book is broken up into chapters. It starts by talking about Toltec wisdom. The Toltec people are native to the Mexico region, and the author, Don Miguel Ruiz, is a descendant of the indigenous Toltec people of the region who passed down all of these ideas and concepts that they use to fuel and sustain their civilization and society hundreds of years ago. And it talks about the importance of looking at the self and understanding how the self connects to other aspects of our world, the heavens, hell, the people that we are coming in contact with always, and basically how spirituality just flows in and out of everything that we see, everything that we do, everything that we are. So the book is definitely a spiritual book. It's written in the second person, which is interesting. So it says, you will experience this, and this is what you will encounter, and this is how you feel, or this is what you might feel. So it's an interesting way to read it. It kind of feels like a self-help book, but it's written with very basic language, and it talks about very simple things that you can do to improve your life. So at first it's like you read it and you're like, okay, I can do that, I can do that. But it goes into why it's so challenging for us to follow these four agreements and why it's so important that we do so if we want to live a successful, happy life. So I'm not going to tell you too much about what's inside of the book, but I wanted to just go through briefly what each of the four agreements is about. So the first agreement in this book is be impeccable with your word. So the author is saying that our words are so powerful and so meaningful, and that we actually cast spells with our tongue when we speak about other things that are going on around us, specifically other people and their circumstances and their lives. So he uses words like black magic, he talks about hell, and he says that when we speak, we create spells. When we say negative things about people, we're actually casting spells on them that he says last years. These spells last years. So it's interesting because immediately upon reading the first agreement, I started to be mindful of everything I was saying. I was like, okay, wait, be impeccable with your word. And that was one thing that I would say overall that I really liked about this book, is that there was immediate gratification for me. Like once I read it and I put it down, I could feel myself and the change and how I was moving and how I was going about my day, which is really interesting. So if you decide to read this book, which I advise that you do, just be prepared for it to really be impactful immediately upon opening it. The first page, the second page, the third page, it hits you and you're like, okay, this is real. And I think the author has a unique way of making the circumstances that he uses as examples in this book relevant to everyday lives. Like the things that he brings up as a way to educate us about the four agreements is very relatable for everyone. The second agreement is don't take anything personally. So that was my favorite agreement upon reading the book. He talked about how people do things because of themselves and not because of you. So any decision that anyone makes, any action that someone takes towards you in your direction, about you, it's really not about you. It's really about them and where they are in that moment and how they're living their lives so that they can accomplish whatever it is that they're trying to accomplish in that moment. The really interesting thing about don't take in anything personally is that He also talks about how we have to be the same way when things are positive, when we get positive feedback and when we get positive reinforcement. He says, don't take that personal as well. So just as easily as somebody could tell you you're wonderful, you're fantastic, you're brilliant, somebody could tell you you're dumb, you're stupid, you're ugly. And either way, you can't take it personal. You have to know that the reason why people are saying things to you is because of where they are in their world and their perception of how you fit into their world. But it's not necessary, because what he calls it unnecessary suffering. Unnecessary suffering will come as a result of taking anything personally, because you start to have expectations for what people will give you, and you start to just feel like you have to be this person for other people all the time because you want people to say things to you, or you want people to give you things and you don't want them to give you other things. You know, you want all the good energy, you don't want any of the bad energy, but how you really must remain neutral if you want to live a successful life free from suffering. So that's the second agreement. Don't take anything personally. The third agreement is don't make assumptions. He talks about how you have to have the courage to ask questions, and you have to be willing to take the time out to really find the answers, and how so often we just assume things, we just say we understand, and others make assumptions about us, and how that just fills us with misunderstanding, which he says causes pain. He says, you know, the root of pain is confusion and misunderstanding. And if you don't make assumptions, if you just take out the time to ask people what it is that they feel, or what it is that they have to share, or where are they in a moment, when you decide in your mind that you already know, that you avoid so much misunderstanding, and that it actually empowers you to not feel like you have to judge people. And in judging people, you're judging yourself, you know. And that was an interesting thing that I saw that went through all four of the agreements, was that he found a way to educate the reader by saying everything that you do is a result of you. When you cause other people pain, you cause yourself pain. When you judge other people, you judge yourself. When you make other people uncomfortable, you make yourself uncomfortable. So that was definitely highlighted in the third agreement, which was don't make assumptions, where he just talks about how we have to have the courage and the patience to just be willing to look for the answers. The fourth agreement is always do your best, which says that every day your best is going to be different. Sometimes you're going to be on 100, sometimes you're going to be on 85, sometimes you're going to be on 27, but you have to just give whatever you can give in that moment. You can't put pressure on yourself to just give more than you can give, but if you are the best that you can be in every day, you will avoid self-abuse, you will avoid self-destruction, and you will avoid regret. Self-abuse was a really interesting term that he used, because he was saying that when we try to give more than we can give, we abuse ourselves. And very often we forget about our position in our lives, and we just give so much to people, give, which everyone is guilty of in their own way, and how that causes self-abuse. So he's saying just give what you can give in every moment, nothing less, nothing more, and be the best that you can be. After the four agreements, he wraps up the book by talking about breaking old agreements. So he says all our lives we're trained to do certain things, we're trained to form these agreements with ourselves from such an early age, from our parents, from our peers, from society, and how we have to break old agreements in order to adopt these new agreements. So he essentially says that love and freedom is the root of true happiness, and that in order to be free, you have to be willing to let go of your prior understanding of things in order to adopt new ways of thinking. I thought that was really deep, because it's so important to let readers know, you know, it's not just about adopting these new agreements, but it's also about letting go of old agreements. And it's hard to have a negative opinion about the book, because it's not really a book that's telling you what to do as much as it's telling you what you have done and how that has hurt you, and what you can do to experience less pain. Who doesn't want to experience less pain? I want to experience less pain. The Four Agreements, okay? I think the most important issues in this book really are about self-love and how everything that we do to harm others is harming ourselves, and everything that we do that doesn't show truth and love to others is depriving ourselves of those exact things. And I think that's the overall message in this book. Obviously, he's saying these are new agreements, these are new habits you can adopt, these are old habits you need to let go of. But more than anything, it's talking about how self-love is just the root of all happiness. And that is the takeaway message from the Four Agreements. You can order it off Amazon. It's a really small book, short read. I'm sure it's at your local library. It's also a book that if you decide you want to buy, you definitely want to keep it on your shelf, because it's really cool. Even when I read it actually twice, and going back to it, just receiving the same messages, I really appreciated that. So definitely go for the Four Agreements. Like I said, it's an easy read, it's a short read, and you will definitely immediately feel the effects of the Four Agreements and the words of Don Miguel Ruiz. For now, if you want to access a list of the 17 books I'm reading, reviewing, and resourcing in 2017, you can do so at saronsays.com. Thank you.